Are you ready to dive into the mind of a entrepreneur? Someone who is not only aiming to be the top of their game, but has redefined the pinnacle of success. This man is innovative, motivated, inspiring, and does everything he tackles at not 100, but 110%. He's a young 40-year-old entrepreneur, business owner, realtor, team leader, investor, avid hunter, and a wonderful father to his two boys. I am so thrilled to be chatting with and introduce you to Sean Zubor. Throughout the years, Sean has been an inspiration to me. I've been watching how hard he works and how driven he is, and that he truly takes everything on full speed ahead. And I'm confident that from today's conversation, we will be able to learn so much from him and be able to apply that to our goals and our successes. All right, Sean, thank you so much for being here with us. I want to hear your story about how it all started. Let's start with going as far as baby Sean, young Sean. How did it all start?
Well, thanks for having me. I was born in Edmonton, but I come from immigrant parents. They fled communist Hungary in the 70s. And then they ended up in Halifax. Obviously, there were different types of immigration camps on the way here while going through that process. But I was born in Edmonton in 84. We left when I was about 4 or 5, and my brother was 2. So I think I left when we were 4, really after that big tornado, and they really wanted to move out west. My dad was, or just retired, but was a truck driver. My mom, an esthetician. So I come from pretty blue collar background. I grew up in Maple Ridge. I've lived all over Greater Vancouver, but I grew up in Maple Ridge mainly most of my life. And yeah, that's kind of how it all started.
Awesome. Were you a straight A student? How were you in school? Were you a little bit of a troublemaker? I feel like you were a troublemaker.
Yeah, so school was funny. So up until grade 8, I was straight A's, or more or less. I did really well. I was doing grade 10 English and math. So I was accelerated programs. I was doing all those things. Then my parents split, so I moved to a different place out in Maple Ridge. I was living in Pitt Meadows, even though I grew up, like my school was in Maple Ridge and stuff. But anyways, then I started this self-paced school called Thomas Haney in grade 9. And let's just put it this way, I was much more interested in women. I was much more interested in like sports and fighting and all the other stupid stuff. So I was lucky enough that I was 2 years ahead. So basically for 2 years, I really didn't do much of anything. Then I got into trouble, got kicked out of school. And I actually ended up graduating when I was 27. And I went back to get my real estate license or become a firefighter, one of the two. Those were kind of my two options. But yeah, in school in general, I did well when I was focused on academia. But I was always kind of more driven by experiences. Like when I got my black belt when I was 10 years old in karate, I was a national champion multiple times over, and I did semi-contact. My first semi-pro professional fight, I was 17 years old, so still in high school. It's been an interesting transition.
In your household, growing up with immigrant family, because I'm Polish, right? So coming up from a communist country and all these different things, how was money, wealth, success, entrepreneurship viewed in your household? Were you taught about that growing up?
So my dad had a deep hatred for communism, so much so that I learned Hungarian from my grandparents when communism fell in the 90s. They came to visit and stayed, and I was, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old or whatever it was. They didn't speak a lick of English, so I learned it from them. And even when I speak Hungarian right now, I speak like a kid, because that's really majority of where that came from. They did instill in me an amazing work ethic, because both of them worked 40, 60, 80 hours a week. Both of them worked tirelessly, saved money. I would say they're more frugal than I ever have been. So I've probably, because they're so frugal, I've, almost did the opposite at certain times. But their work ethic, I definitely got instilled into me from them. However, I would say the entrepreneurship side is probably more myself. And maybe because I was just almost, it's not like they never supported me. So I don't want to seem like my parents didn't support me at all. They supported every endeavor, but in Europe, and I'm sure there's something similar to this, because I've heard it in Russian, I've heard it in a bunch of things. So I'm sure there's something similar in Poland as well. But it's more of like you're acting like a cosmonaut, where it's kind of like your head's in the space, like come back down to earth. You know what I mean? Like I always wanted to be a millionaire. I always wanted to do TV stuff and fight. And now I no longer search for fame at all. So it's completely opposite, to be honest. I want to hide in the woods. But at that point, I've always wanted to. And I think maybe part of it is my parents were just always like, we don't want you to be upset if it doesn't happen or things like that. So it's just like, go to school, do this, get a good job. Whereas myself from day one as a kid, like I've never had a non-commissioned job my entire life. I've always wanted to be self-employed, and I've always wanted to control my destiny when it comes to the finances. So I think that was a little bit of a separate things. Like even to the day, like if I have a fantastic year, I can't even tell my dad because he's gonna be like, oh, well, the taxes you have to pay or this, you know what I mean? Like it's just it's a completely different mindset, right? Even though he brags about me more than anybody else, right? It's just a different type of mindset when it comes to that. Yeah.
They almost want to protect you in their way. And I get that because I can relate to that 100%. So now that you are a father of two beautiful boys, how old are they now?
So Hunter's turning 10 and Jack 6, but they're basically 3 years apart. So
Beautiful.
9 and 6.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
What are you instilling in them as a father? What differences are you kind of instilling in terms of entrepreneurship, success, however that may be interpreted, and kind of lifestyle and happiness? What are you doing with them? How are you teaching them?
Well, there's a lot of lessons that I'm learning because it's almost polar opposite to what my parents were very strict, old school Hungarian type thing in certain ways. Whereas now for me, it's like I would never consider, and I don't want to throw it out that I went without, my dad had a boat, I went fishing and hunting, like I had an amazing childhood. So I'm not trying to say like, I was poor in, something like that. However, it was always very much like my dad's going to lose his job, so he can't spend money on this, or which he never ended up losing his job. But, there's always some kind of cap on money, more or less. And so I know now I've kind of changed that because at the beginning, I almost did the opposite. Like my kids were spoiled. Like they've had first class tickets to across the world and like they've done all these different types of things. And then I start hearing things from them saying, and it's almost like they don't understand where this money comes from. So it really has been, especially over the last 2 years, a process for myself to realize, okay, no, I really need to instill. They have work ethic, like they're both really good at sports. My youngest wakes up with me. I'm up at 4:30. He's up at 6 running on the treadmill. So they have very good work ethic. But when it comes to money and understanding the realities of money, not just that it falls out of the tree, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. This is something that I've been learning over the last couple of years to make sure I instill in them. So now they do chores, they have to hit certain things before they're allowed certain things. I take away in form of punishment, you can't smack kids as much as you used to be able to. So I
can relate to that
swearing.
too.
Exactly. They're swearing that I took away their electronics for a month or something like that. So it's been a learning process, but for me, I want to instill. Both of them seem like they want to be entrepreneurs of some sort. But whatever they want to do, I want them just to be 100% passionate about it. That's the most important thing. And passionate in a way that they're willing to commit and sacrifice and do it the days that they don't want to do it, right? So Hunter tells me he wants to be a professional soccer player and he's doing extremely well. But then I wake him up and, if he doesn't want to wake up, I'm like, I thought this is what you want to do. Like, it's not all, you don't just get the victories without the work, right?
That's right.
I think they're still very young, instilling them in them right now, that they are incredibly blessed to have the things that they have. And also to make sure that they understand the only reason they have things they have is because work ethic was behind it, for sure.
I love it. And they're going to grow up to be awesome little entrepreneurs. I know it.
Hopefully.
And you mentioned hunting, and I know that's a very passionate sport for you, and it is something that you started young. You mentioned that it was something part of the family, and Can you talk a little bit about that? I know that's a very, very big topic for you.
Yes. I'm almost bipolar in my lifestyle in certain ways. And what I mean by that is I've had the opportunity to speak in front of thousands of agents and, in the biggest cities of the world. And I love going to Tokyo and New York. And it's just amazing to see what humans have created. So I'm a big fan of big cities too. I can never live in one, but I'm a big fan of visiting them. I think they're really cool. But for myself, the ultimate escape is to see like God's creations and being out there in the woods hunting. It's not necessarily about the harvest. Obviously, I eat all the meat and I enjoy eating wild game and all the benefits that come with that. But for me, it's detaching from my lifestyle, detaching from my cell phone, detaching from the internet, detaching from everything. And now it's turning into something that it's not just detaching from the rest of the world, but while I'm detaching on half of these, I'm taking my kids now, and it's now I'm just creating even more of a bond with them, going through experiences that I went through, and them understanding the meaning of life and death, and all these things that are associated with it. It is a forever teaching me something to be in the woods, and I think that, and I'm a big a part of the Wild Sheep Society, trying to get more into that as well. We just actually had a booth in Penticton at one of their conferences. The sheep hunting side is completely different than the rest. That we're out in the woods for 2 or 3 weeks, hiking with 90-pound packs, hundreds of kilometers. I think last time I lost 17 pounds in 2 weeks, and we still didn't shoot anything. And it is one of the, and you're getting chased by grizzly bears. Like that is more of like when I got into ultra marathons. It's similar. It's just creating this massively ridiculous experience out in the woods. Whereas the other side of it, like I said, is I'll take the trailer out and we'll go whitetail hunting or mule deer hunting or just grouse hunting. And I'm bringing my kids and all my best buddies and their kids, and they're all, and it's really like, if we shoot grouse, you can shoot, but if we shoot a deer, it'll be like the biggest miraculous thing ever because the kids are beating each other up, and like there's not much stealth when it comes to hunting with 6 or 9, 6-year-olds to 9-year-olds, right? So, but it's a different type. It's more like community then, and it's enjoying the outwoods and unplugging from everything else, but coming together as a family. So it is something that's huge for me. And honestly, with business wise too, I have. Oh, I'd be lying if I said it, but I got at least $20 million in listings alone just currently, either active or coming up from the hunting community. And I'm working on my biggest $1 billion pre-sale project in Brentwood. And the owner, who doesn't speak a lick of English, is a big hunter, and we've kind of connected through this community as well. So it's a community that I'm just proud to be a part of in many ways, but it's great for business, great for everything.
I love it. And what a great community it is. And it's such an adventure. Like I've seen some of your videos, and you have an awesome YouTube channel, and it kind of goes through that. And I've seen some of the pictures, and it's just what an incredible adventure. Like weren't you stalked like by a bear or something like this? Like you have to
Twice on our last trip.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
You have to chopper into these areas. Like it's pretty extreme. You got to be hardcore, very dedicated, and really are asking for punishment.
Yeah, and that's really what it is. And that's why I kind of compare it to when I did the 100-kilometer ultra marathon race. It's like, we call it type 2 fun. And I don't know if you've heard that before, but while you're doing it, you're like, what the hell am I doing right now? Like, this is the dumbest idea. Like, my back hurts. I got blisters that are 2 inches thick. Like, grizzlies are chasing me. I'm about to fall off this mountain. And then as soon as you hop back on the jet boat or the float plane, you're already planning the next trip, because it is the memories that you get from this and the experiences that are out of this world. And you do have moments like when you're laying under the stars, and there's, for me, I mean, I love that you guys live in Creston. So at the end of the day, you guys will experience it more than most lower mainlanders will, for example. But it's crazy the amount of people that live in British Columbia and have never experienced true wilderness or gone past like Kelowna or Whistler or whatever it is, right? I've had the pleasure of traveling right to the Yukon border, and when we fly out, we usually fly out from a place called Moonshell Lake, which is 45 minutes an hour from the Yukon border up north. We fly out of there, and you're literally staying under the stars. Like, people don't understand how bright the Milky Way is, and like you can walk around on the top of a mountain with a little bit of a moon, and it's half the daylight. You know what I mean? Because whereas here with light pollution, it is really something that transcends, and you really do get these memories that you can't do anything else. There's just nothing else in the world that compares to it, for sure.
I love it. It seems like it's life-changing.
It's one of those things. I speak about this, actually. I just spoke about this at a last conference I did, and I'm a big believer in doing difficult things. I use different terminology, but it's not the nicest terminology. But for me, it's like this. It's if you're sitting at your table with your family and friends during Christmas time, for example, right? what are you usually talking about? You're talking about friends, family, and if you're talking about anything about yourself, it's usually the challenging things you've gone through. Like, oh, I lost 30 pounds. I started this new diet. I've been working out at the gym. I've been all of these things, right? And it's always difficult things that change you and you are most proud of, right? It's never like, oh yeah, what have you done last year? Oh, I've just been, sitting on the couch watching Netflix 12 hours a day. Nobody is ever proud of that, right?
No.
It's proud of like, I created this, I tried this, I did this, I've overcome these obstacles. And so hunting is one of those things, especially sheep hunting, where that's why it's like that type 2 fun. While you're doing it, there's minutes and moments of like, wow, this is insane. But then a lot of the time it's just like, wow, I just hiked 25 kilometers with 80-pound packs with no trail in the bush and I feel like dying. But when it's done, it's just like, wow, I did that, right? And it really allows you to understand who you are and what you are capable of. Because if you never test your capabilities, then really you have no idea. Either you're overconfident for no reason, or most people are just genuinely, they don't really know how powerful they are until they test it.
Do you think that helps you with the success that you have right now? Challenging yourself like that?
For sure. Me, I'm been big into like cold calling and door knocking, like online leads. These are one of the things that people get me to talk on quite often. And one of the things that I hear consistently over and over again is like, well, I don't want to get hung up on. It's embarrassing. Like, I don't like, I'm bugging people, etc. Right? So, to put into perspective, when I fought professionally, I think the biggest thing I fought in front of was maybe 3,000 people. Like, there's somebody across the cage that literally wants to kill you. Like, they don't want to kill you, but they want to kill you to win. You know what I mean? And so when somebody's trying to punch your face out or submit you or, choke you or kill you or whatever the situation is, that is, you really become hyper-focused and into that zone. But also, the positive side effect of doing these difficult things is somebody hanging up the phone on you or slamming the door on you or not wanting to work with you is, I would take that 10 times or 100 times out of 100 times than getting punched in the face. Right? So doing these difficult things put everything else into perspective. Yes. Really.
So speaking of which, let's dive into that, because you had a career in MMA fighting. And how did you get started with that? How far did you go? And why did your career end?
I've been in some sort of martial arts since I was 5 years old, as I mentioned before, and karate or whatever have you. So MMA, I started when I was 15 or 16, something along those lines, with Lance Gibson and Chris Franco. They were together. They had a pancration, which was kind of like, it was literally created for MMA, more or less, but pancrase came from like the Greek times or the Roman times, whatever. Anyways, it's stand-up, so it's kickboxing, Muay Thai, and like jiu-jitsu, which is like grappling and so on and so forth. So I had my first semi-pro fights, and why I say semi-pro is because back then, if you were to look up my record right now, I think it shows like 3-2 or something. At that point, it was illegal. So we were fighting on like native reserves and in the States and all these other things. And it wasn't even called MMA at the beginning. It was called No Holds Barred, NHB. Okay. And so there were no real rules except for like no groin shots and eye gouging and, all the stuff that a lot of the things that are illegal in the current UFC were legal back then. I think I had about 7 or 8 fights with that group. Then I took off, went on a hiatus, got into sales, stopped. And then I went back into MMA when I was about 24. And between 24 and 27 is when I really went all out. I fought for titles. I fought in the local things. I got a call up to try out for the UFC, the Ultimate Fighter. There was actually the Ultimate Fighter Canada. And then mainly the reason that I stopped it all is, and the reason I couldn't go to that call out is I broke my finger in one of my fights. And I won, but I had a broken orbital and a broken finger. Ouch. Orbital is still dented, but didn't affect it. But the problem with the finger was it took me almost a year to get to a point where I could close my fist.
Wow.
And so much so, like, I was thinking about getting it amputated. Like, it was my whole life was surrounded by fighting. At the same time, I was a mortgage broker at RBC, funny enough. But I was completely enamored by it. But then what ended up happening is I lost a title fight. And I blamed myself because I wasn't able to train enough because my finger and so on and so forth. And then I kind of had this moment that I'm like, okay, well, I was just about to get married. I was just about to, commit to different types of things in my life. So for me, it was like, okay, I need a little bit of control. I know I can train 6 hours a day. I know I can work my butt off. And I had friends that were fighting in the UFC and they were making no money. And to me, what really made me quit, and it is quitting without a doubt, it's just quitting with a reason, I guess, is that I didn't want to be the best guy in the world, train as hard as I possibly could, roll my ankle walking down the street, my career was done. And then all that was for nothing, right? Yeah. So for myself, I'm just like, okay, I'm going to let this go. And that's when I decided to transition to real estate. I was either going to get into firefighting or real estate. And real estate made a lot more money in the first 6 weeks, and now it's history.
So let's talk about your first year in real estate. So you got licensed, you got a young bride, full speed ahead. Your first year as a realtor.
Yeah, so I was 29 years old, and I've always been in, like, I ran car dealerships. I've always been in sales. So sales wasn't a distraction for me. I knew being self-motivated was going to be okay. That being said, there was a lot of naysayers, including, for example, my dad. He's just like, well, son, how are you going to support yourself for the next, realtors don't make money for their first 5 years and all these different types of things that you hear, right? I basically joined Adam's real estate team, who's now my business partner at Stonehaus. And within the first 6 weeks, I sold 6 properties. And I sold those from cold calling, I door knocked, I did for sale by owner, I did all of the old school stuff. I went to barbecues. Actually, I think 2 or 3 of them were from barbecues, like referrals. So I just kind of did everything. I remember making $50,000 more or less after the splits, maybe just shy of that. And I'm like, okay, this is definitely for me. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, I went on my own. Awesome. That was kind of the story. So the first year was good. It was a lot of learning lessons because I realized that I burnt out quickly working 17 hours or whatever it was a day, some ridiculous hours. But there was a lot of learning lessons from the first year.
Because you did like 60 deals in your first year. Like, that's incredible. There's realtors that have been in the business for 10 years. They don't make that.
Yeah, it was just under, I think it was like 56 or something like that. Yeah, it was a lot of work, but I feel like I could have done a lot more, which was crazy because no, the reason why is, it was a decent market too. So I'm not give credit to where credit is due, but I feel like, I didn't understand that real estate was a business, and I focused on strictly it being a sales job. And I think that's one of the major changes that have happened over the last few years, or I would say last 6 or 7 years, is that I didn't have systems. So even though I did a lot of deals, it was 6 deals, nothing, 10 deals, nothing. And so I was on this real estate roller coaster. So I can say, like, there was a lot of splits and stuff in there. I made quite a bit of money, but I had nothing left over on it because I was just like these highs and lows, right?
There was no systems in place. And then after that, you and Adam started your first brokerage, Stonehaus Realty. How did that come about? Why would you do that to yourself? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so we started Stonehaus in 2017, and I started real estate end of 2013. So I was in the business for about 3.5 years, give or take. And at that point, I already had a team of roughly 10 agents. We were doing 150 to 250 transactions a year, so we were doing quite a few deals. And what it really was is, and I won't say what brokerage I was at, but my agents were just furious paying these like $1,800, $2,000, $1,500, whatever a month to the brokerage. And really, they weren't getting any support, manager broker support. They weren't getting leads. They weren't getting anything except for a particular brand that they didn't really feel, coincided with any transactions or deals, right? So they were consistently and constantly telling me, like, let's go somewhere that's cheap. Like, everybody knows our brand. Nobody knows them. Who cares? Like, etc. So that was one of the main pulls. And then there was some internal struggles within that brokerage as well that just no longer want to be a part of. So my thought was, I'm just going to go to a cheaper brand. Doesn't matter to me. Just like the logo I'll make smaller and make it disappear kind of thing and just blow up my stuff. And at that time, Adam was talking about buying a Keller Williams Black Diamond, actually. He was going to open Black
interesting.
Diamond. Yeah, decided not to, which probably was for the best. And we've never been introduced to you then. It's possible. You never know. We started Stonehaus, and the goal of Stonehaus at the beginning, we always wanted to recruit agents, don't get me wrong, but it was really more of like the boutique type. And we didn't really, like I was looking at numbers actually just recently, and up until 2019, 2020, we were still around 60, 70 agents. At one point, maybe it was 80 something in, I think, 2020. And then right before COVID, that's when we're like, okay, systems that we're working, the things that we're doing are starting to become effective. I think we have something here to blow it up. And then between basically 2020 and now is where we've gone from less than 100 to 400 agents.
That's an incredible growth. And what do you attribute to the success of Stonehaus? How is it different than other brokerages? There are so many brokerages out there. How does Stonehaus stand out?
So there are genuinely a lot of great brokerages out there. And I think one of the things that agents have to ask themselves when looking for a brokerage is what are they looking for in a brokerage, right? And generally speaking, it's always going to be some sort of value. And value, depending on the agent, will depend on what they need out of the brokerage, right? So you can go to a brokerage where it's $50 a month to hang your license and you get absolutely nothing, right? But that might be the value you're looking for. You can go to a brokerage that you're going to spend tons and tons of money and it's a luxury type of brand and may help you close a luxury deal, but it's going to cost you, $50,000 to $100,000 in splits to be there. That might still be of value to you, right? So every brokerage offers something. Our goal was to have whatever the value, like for example, we charge $600 a month, right? Whatever that value is, or that cost is, we want to give, a $20,000 value, right? That we want it to be completely outweighed. And some people take advantage of it. Some people don't take advantage of it. And those are really the people that are going to, if you take $5,000 worth of advantage out of it, then it's totally well worth it for you. If you don't use any of our systems, then that $599 is not worth it for you. But for me, it's providing value. And I think the first and foremost portion that we kind of grew on was the training. That was our most important thing. It's just real life training, incorporating guys like Tom Ferry. We brought Ryan Serhant. We've really brought the best of the best to learn from. And I feel like no matter what stage in your career you're at, I'm constantly learning. Like we spend at least $100,000 a year on coaching and training for myself. You know what I mean? So I feel like if I can pass along any of that information that I'm learning or have these systems that other agents can, then it'll help better their business. Because really that's the only way you grow is by growing yourself personally.
I love that. And Stonehaus tagline is culture, technology, and mentorship. Let's talk about that a little bit.
So culture is extremely important. And to be real, like it's difficult as a brokerage owner to maintain a culture, especially the bigger you get. But really how you maintain it, because at the very beginning, when you have like 30 or 40 or 50 people, like I can be the culture. You know what I mean? I can drive everybody and be on top of everybody because it's like almost like a big team, right? But once you grow past that, you really need to have the key right hires, the people that are in the brokerage that reflect who you are, the culture that you want this business to create, the people that are around you, because they are truly the ambassadors of the brokerage. So it is really the people that create the culture. Obviously, I genuinely believe it starts from the top. And if I screw up on something, you can see it resonate through others, right? But I feel like that is the first and foremost, is having the right people there and having that culture and supporting that culture. Like we've always been big on community events. We've always been big on bringing the agents together. Like today, I was just at a collaboration event. There's probably 50 or 60 agents there learning from others. That's part of the culture. We've always been big on Christmas parties and so on and so forth. So the culture is something that's very important because people want to be with people that are like-minded in a lot of ways, right? So that's the first thing. Technology, we were one of the first companies to have online leads in Canada. Adam and I were the second, I think, in Canada to have Commissions Inc., which is the biggest one. So we built a lot of systems. And today we have downlines that are technology based. We have Lofty, which is like $50 a month, which used to cost us like $600 or $700 a month. So there's a lot of technology for the online lead portion. We have Tom Ferry apps. We have technology is a major part, and we're just working on a bunch of other stuff when it comes to AI everything is always evolving, but I feel like my personal business sense is always giving as much value and finding a way to leverage the most. And technology is a huge way to leverage, right?
Absolutely.
So that's something that's been huge to us. And then the last part kind of goes hand in hand with everything is mentorship. You can have all these things, but if nobody knows how to use them, they're useless. And that's really kind of, and I was just looking at our training calendar. Last month we had 52 training sessions in total, which is pretty crazy.
That's amazing. That is a lot of training. And training is so important. And it does it not just for new realtors, it's for absolutely everybody. Even for me, being in this business for so long, I still feel the need to update and remind myself what I need to do, because we get into a rhythm of comfort. And then it's like, okay, well, I'm not doing the things that I need to be doing. And it's really important to have that constant reminder. And I love that about Stonehaus. So I think it's like 80% of realtors literally leave the business in the first 5 years. I don't know exactly if that's the right stats, but it's significant. Why do realtors... Sorry?
87% in 3
years. Is it really? That's intense. So 87% of realtors leave the business in the 5 years. Why do they leave? And what is it that they can do to stay in the business?
So, and this may not be a popular answer, but I'll be very straightforward. I think a lot of people get into the business not understanding what it actually takes to be in the business. They watch a couple reality TV shows. They hear about, you're making $1 million a year and all these other things. So I don't think there is a certain, and I shouldn't say personality, but there is certain traits that a realtor needs to be successful with. So they have to be confident speaking with people that are complete strangers. That's the first thing. Right? So, because I genuinely think those that prospect the most are the ones that win. There's 1,000,001 different ways to prospect, but the only way to pick up clients is to have as many conversations about real estate as you possibly can. That's as simplified and dumbified as possible, for lack of a better word. But I think that's the number one reason people is they don't understand what it actually takes to be successful in real estate. That's the first thing. The second thing is the ones that do have the attributes to become successful, are willing to talk to strangers, are willing to, go out of their comfort zone, are willing to do videos, are willing to do podcasts now, are willing to do all these different types of things, right? They fail when they don't plan. And far too often, and I say this to a lot of new agents that come on, but this is even seasoned agents that kind of get phased out of the business, is that you wear two hats in real estate. Even though you technically work for a brokerage and all these other things, the truth is you're a CEO, so you're an entrepreneur of your own business, right? And then you're actually the realtor that does the work. And so most people either take way too much time and focus on the CEO side, and they're just waiting for things to happen because they planned, right? But far too often what they do is they become eager, they're real estate agents, and then they come to work, they sit there and twirl their thumbs and like, now what? I posted on Instagram and Facebook that I'm a realtor. Why aren't my 1,000 followers using me? You know what I mean? So the reality of what the business is, I think, escapes most people that get their license. And the thing is, you'll see a lot of very intelligent people get their license because, and I've heard this before, well, I saw this Joe Blow down the street. I know him. He's not the brightest guy, and he's making tons of money, right?
I could do better.
Yeah, I know better, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas that guy that lives down the street may not be the brightest guy, but he's willing to talk to every single person he meets, period, about buying or selling real estate, right? And he's willing to do what the guy who's much, much smarter won't do, right? So I think that's part of it. I always say this to everybody. You have to be a great negotiator, great marketer, great client service. All of these things are incredibly important, right? But I can tell you I've met agents that have none of those, right? And are still making a ton of money.
Really?
Which is horrible because they know how to pick up clients. Mm-hmm. And the reality is you can be a great negotiator, you can give the best customer service, you can market like nobody else their property, you can do all of these amazing things, but if you have no clients to do it for, then all those skills are useless, right? So the truth, the real difference between agents that make a very good living and those that don't, obviously you're going to get more referrals. You're going to do, like, I would never say that the client is not the most important thing. Of course, the client is always the most important thing, and doing good by them is the most important thing. However, the most important part of growing your business is finding more clients. And I think most agents don't systemize, they don't come up with business plans, they don't understand where these clients are coming from. They're just waiting for them to come. Or on the opposite side, maybe they're super go-getters and they door knock all day, every day. What ends up happening is they door knock every day, all day. They get a bunch of clients. While they're working and servicing those clients, they're no longer prospecting. So those clients get sold and now they're back to, and they're on this roller coaster of income, right?
And emotion.
Exactly. Yeah.
So with realtors, I do find, of course, I run a team and all these things as well. And the most challenging thing is bouncing back from those disappointments. The deal that you didn't get, the deal that fell apart that you were relying on, the client that went with someone else, the listings that don't sell, the buyer that bought with someone else, the buyer that never bought. All of those things are such disappointments in our career. And it's about managing that and the emotions of it all and bouncing back. Do you have some advice on that?
Yeah, that's having a thick skin and understanding. It's so funny. Like my fault completely. I was at this Penticton hunting expo, and I met with a guy a week prior, referral of a friend, right? And anyways, long story long, he emailed me saying, "Can we meet on Thursday? I want to list my place." I typed out the email, didn't press send. It was still in my draft, right? And so I called him up, a week after, because I had forgotten. I hadn't done my job and put it in my calendar, right? He's like, "Oh, hey, Sean. Yeah, I figured you were just super busy. I know because I got towers coming up," and he knows all these things, right? Probably super busy, but don't worry. I went with Chase in your office. So still in your office, right? And I'm sitting with Chase laughing my ass off. I'm like, "You stole my client, asshole." And he's like, "Well, it wasn't your client. You didn't sign it." I'm like, "Fair enough," right? And so
snooze, you lose.
That's it. Totally my fault. 100%. I deserved it, right? So I think there's two things when it comes to those. Like a lot of agents, that would literally break relationships. You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. For me, it's not even water off my back. It's that so insignificant. And it's not because, I know I was the one that screwed up. And most of the time, it is us that screws up. Sometimes it's not, don't get me wrong, but most of the time it is. But even if it isn't, it makes no difference. And I think there's two ways to overcome this constant of disappointment. First, and this is something that Ryan Serhant said, and I think he even says it in his book, which I totally take to heart. He's like, you will focus on those losses, right, when you have nothing else going on.
That is so true.
And he talks about it in the fact that I'm always juggling so many balls, right? So many listings, so many whatever, that if one drops, I don't even notice it. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be, servicing clients or whatever, but I'm firing the client tomorrow. They're not willing to drop their price point. They're not willing to come into reality of the market. They can go list with somebody else. And the only reason I can do that is because technically I have 476 listings. You know what I mean? So yeah. When you build a business plan that will create abundance in how many things are coming, right? These small losses are just part of the statistics of your business. And I mean, I know that's easy to say now, right? At the very beginning, my first few losses, like I wanted to hunt them down, you know what I mean? So I completely understand where agents are coming from. I would just focus in moving forward and building that pipeline more than the ones that got away. I would ask the ones that got away, "Hey, I'm always trying to learn more about what I could do better. How did I lose your business?" And they'll tell you. And then that's, some great objective criticism that you can take to possibly better yourself in the future. But if you are always focusing on building that pipeline, building new clients, bringing new relationships in, doing the work that you need to do to grow, when you lose one or two, it's not going to matter.
I love that. And that's such great advice. And yeah, Ryan Serhant's book is awesome. I have read it and it's fabulous. So I would highly suggest that. So now, Sean, you are, my goodness, what is it that you don't do? You're a team leader. You own brokerages. Obviously, you work out. You stay healthy. I saw something on Facebook recently that you're fasting. You're doing all of these things. Of course, you're a father. You're a businessman. You do all of these things. How do you manage your time? Is it as simple as scheduling and keeping to it? How do you manage your time? How do you look at your week, your month, your year?
So two things. I'm always trying to get better at it. So it's one thing that it is a learning process. I have an issue, and this is what my coach has been mentoring me over the last 2 years. I have a hard time saying no. So no is sometimes much more powerful than yes. So I'll just put that out there. So yes, I do a lot of things. I'm not necessarily saying that everybody should, right? That being said, if I could look back in time, some of my biggest regrets was that I didn't have any balance in my life. And what I mean by that is, I don't believe in balance as in what most people picture 50-50. You know what I mean? Like 50% family time and personal time, 50% work. Depending on your goals, that's not a reality, right? So my work will probably be 70 or 80% of my life for most of my life because that's how I work, right? But the cool thing about real estate especially is a lot of people that join real estate think that they're going to have all this free abundant time. The reality is the more you want to earn, you're not going to have free abundant time. You're going to work more, but you can pick your schedule a little bit more than the average person that has to show up from 9 to 5. So the most important thing is systems. That's going to leverage your time and space. So what I mean by systems, there's two ways to grow any business for income. A is going to be you make more money per hour. So that would be charging more commission or getting focusing on higher price listings. And B is creating more hours in the day. And so the only way to create more hours in the day is through leverage of either people, so admin staff, team members, VAs, whatever it may be, or technology of some sort, like AI, online lead generation, whatever it may be. These are the ways that you can kind of leverage your time. So I'm always, every 6 months or so, or maybe even less, I track what I do for an entire week, like everything from like I ate for 30 minutes, I did this, I did that. And I look back and I just start check marking all the things that I could have got somebody else to do. I could have flipped with different time because I'm trying to find gaps in my time to be productive. Now, the one thing that I'm facing is, and this is one thing that I would just say when you start doing a lot of these things, I do wake up at 4:35 every morning. I do focus my personal, I have a, it's not written down anywhere, but I basically have a priority list of my life. So I'm not trying to be preachy, but right now it's basically God. After that is going to be my personal self, right? And people are like, well, that's pretty selfish.
No.
And I'll explain this afterwards, my personal self. And then it's my relationship, my kids, my family, etc. Right? And then it goes into business after that. And the reason I put myself first, below obviously what I mentioned before, is the fact that if you're not healthy, if you don't feel good, if your stress isn't mitigated, if all these things aren't done and taken care of, like going to the gym, eating better, etc., then that affects your relationships, that affects what you can do with your kids and the time you spend with them, what type of energy you have in the business, etc. Right? So by being selfish with taking care of yourself first, it allows you to be that much better in everything else that you do. So for me, planning that throughout my day, using these leverage points, using the right people, and growing my business plan this way has been the way that have allowed me to do, 6 weeks of hunting a year, 4 weeks of traveling, and then still managing these different businesses.
That's incredible. And is that the way you measure success as well, in terms of priority?
No. So success, everybody has, it was funny, I was on Brad Lee's podcast in Vegas, I don't know, a couple months ago. And he asked me, he's like, we had a long conversation, probably 15 minutes about just success. And we're having the same understanding. Everybody's success, what they consider success is completely different, right? And even when an agent comes in, I'll have one agent says, I want to make $1 million or $2 million a year. Okay, that's their success. Then I'll have a single father that just joined us and he's like, listen, man, I got 1 week on, 1 week off. I only want to work that 1 week because I got my kids the other week. I want to make 150 grand a year. And I am like ecstatic. I don't have a house to pay for or whatever, right? So everybody, it's what makes them feel good and accomplished is success. It is not branded at you have to be a millionaire to be successful or you have to do this. It's whatever you personally. So for myself, I want to do the things that I love to do with the people I love to do it with, right? And I don't want that to be limited because I don't have the funds to do it, right? And for what, in the business sense, where I'm most proud of, where I see the most joy from, obviously I love money like everybody else. I would be a complete liar if I didn't. But I love to see agents succeed by what I've been able to help them with. Like even with the fighting thing, when I fought for belts and, I had this fame and whatever you want to call it, it was really cool. Don't get me wrong, but I felt a million times better when I was teaching my 14-year-old students and they were competing in the world championships and they were winning, or Pan Ams or whatever, that was much more rewarding to me than it was. So success, I think, is measured individually by where you are happy with what you do. You know what I mean? Like if I just sat on the couch, somebody might be like that, and I know people that literally look at their bank accounts and that just makes them feel amazing, right? Mm-hmm. Nothing wrong with that. Some people love, if I buy a Ferrari, I'm successful. Totally cool. There is no right or wrong. For me, that's not it at all. For me, I want to be able to go on these adventures. I want to take my kids with me on these adventures in the future. I want to hang out with really cool people. I want to help people grow their businesses. Yeah, traveling, like these are the things that make me happy. So as long as I can do that, I consider it success.
I love that. And what or who do you attribute to your success? Of course, it's not something you can do by yourself.
First off, I would contribute it to my parents for their work ethic. I think that's a huge thing. And, even though we don't necessarily think, not eye to eye, but we wouldn't execute and be entrepreneurs, I think that's one thing. Another thing would be, I can't even single out one person. Like I've been mentored by hundreds of amazing people over the years. I genuinely search for mentors all the time, and I'm extremely grateful for the ones that I've worked with in the past. I would be a liar if I said one person in particular, but I'll give you an example. I mentioned I was on a few podcasts this week. One of them was a guy that I met 12 years ago, right? And this is only the second time we've been on a video conference, right? We've spoken on the phone numerous times, but he's the one, I met him through the Commissions Inc. website or Facebook group. He's the one that I called out of nowhere and been like, hey, I'm starting a team. Because in BC at that point, there weren't a lot of teams. It was all mainly like friends or, family members. There wasn't mega teams like what we ended up growing, right? And he literally took 3 hours. He lives in Alabama, took 3 hours on the phone to just spill out exactly what he did, how he was doing it, right? And now I'm on his podcast talking about how we created a company that does $3 billion in sales, right? So
amazing.
If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here where I am today. And there's just a lot of people that are like that. And if I could recommend one thing, I think the only superpower that I have associated with it is when I'm mentored, I care so much about what they say that I actually execute it. And I think that's a huge difference. Like if I could say there's one thing that I'm good at doing is if I believe in something, I'm going to execute it. And if you execute it, that's where you get the results. And that's the only hack in business is learn from others that are doing what you want to do and just do what they're doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's great advice. And of course, we have days that we're feeling drained and you cannot pour from an empty cup. How do you fill your soul cup? What do you do to fill yourself up? Like you mentioned, God, Sean, family relationships, and so forth. How do you fill your cup to be able to provide yourself to your business, to your family, and so forth?
So this is a constant challenge. And, I'd be lying if I said that, it's just an easy 1, 2, 3. I recently found, and in learning about God, so that's been something that's been important to me, knowing your why and your reason of why you're doing this, right? I got caught up, just like everybody else, in vision boards. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with them, but I did a vision board, but I just put the stuff that I thought I was wanting, like a Ferrari and Rolexes and all that other kind of cool stuff. That didn't make me wake up at 4:30, right? So I had to find the real reason of like, okay, why am I going to wake up at 4:30 every morning and do the things I need to do? Like you said, filling up your cup. I feel like if you put yourself first, you will have this time to have some mental clarity, right? Book time off. Like one of the things that I talk about in business planning is not just business, but it's personal planning. Like, do you know when your date nights are? Do you know when you're going to go on vacation so you have something to look forward to? Do you have once or twice a month where it's like completely disconnect from the entire world where you can just focus on whatever you focus on, right? I feel like we need to put ourselves mental health, especially like I had a good conversation. I think it was yesterday. I did actually yesterday at church. And I was talking to a gentleman and he's in heavy labor, right? So him and I are completely opposite in what we do, right? And it's funny. And we were laughing about it. For him, he loves to, on his days off, he goes into a suit, he goes to conferences, like he loves the whole intellectual portion, right? Whereas my day off, I'm throwing on like whatever I can. I'm going to go axe some stuff, go hunting, go, whatever it is. I want to get into the forest because I want to be physical, where he wants to be mental. So we're always escaping whatever we currently are, because, a mental drain is just as difficult as a physical drain. It's just two different ways, right? So understanding what brings you back to, your zone and refills that cup and refills that tank is important to know, and plan that in. And I think that's going to be something that will help you move forward.
And that's part of your motivation, I guess, as well, right? Because my next question was kind of what motivates you to keep going and day after day, wake up at 4:30 in the morning, keep doing what you're doing. What's that big driving factor? Is it the goals, or is it how you feel the next day? Like what is it really?
So it's a little bit of both, actually. I've always been very goal driven, and I think goals are incredibly important, because if you don't have a goal, I look at it as, best way to explain it is, if you don't have a goal and you're trying to find a place on a map, right? So we'll figure out as like the goal is where you're going in the map, right? If you don't know where you're going, it's very difficult to plan a route to somewhere. You're just going to be driving everywhere, right? So a goal is where the direction comes from. A lot of people, though, the problem is they don't realize that, okay, just like on a map, you may have the goal where we want to end up in Alberta, let's just say, right? Well, there's various ways to get to Alberta. Do you know what I mean? So it's not necessarily always going to be exactly one way or the thought that you got there. So a lot of people on their attempts to hit that goal may have detours, and they're like, oh, this is not going to work, right? So I think goal is incredibly important. But then the other thing too is, with a goal, the downside of a goal next to it is not as precise of a direction to get to every single time, but is that we also don't feel fulfilled until we hit a goal. And the problem is, where I've noticed, and this has taken time to realize, is I didn't feel fulfilled even when I hit a goal, right? Like, it's funny, I negotiate a big deal, like, I'm working on, like I mentioned, almost $1 billion listing. Right now is what drives me. Once I sign that paperwork and I have the $1 billion listing, it's no longer like this, I have it already. Now I got to work on it, right? Now I got to do all these other things. So the goal is not necessarily what makes you happy or content or whatever. What makes me happy is doing the things I'm supposed to be doing every day, right? On the way to that goal. And also what makes me happy is understanding, this is really what I've been working on the last 3 or 4 years, is being more present. The reality is, yesterday is an illusion. It's no longer here. It's completely gone. And so much of our time is spent on, like, I wish I did this. I wish I did that. Why did I do this? Like, why did I ever talk to that person? Like, it's so stuck in the past that it limits us from moving forward. I can say, even to this day, where I've been trying to fight it, I'm still always looking in the past and be like, why did I do that? Or on the opposite, I'm looking into the past and be like, look how cool I was, right? Good on me. And now that's limiting me from moving forward as well, right? So I try to focus on the past and take the learning lessons that I've learned and then just leave it as that, kill it right there. And when it comes to the future, I'm not going to rely on my happiness of, when I hit $1 million, I'm going to be happy. When I hit $10 million, I'm going to be happy. When I hit $100 million, I'm going to be happy. Because the reality is, when I've hit those benchmarks in the port, I wasn't happier. I was just happy on the journey. Right? So, and I can get hit by a bus tomorrow. So that means I'm never going to be happy in my entire life. Right? So using whatever goals in the future is something that can almost deter happiness. Don't defer it. Find it in the moment. Understand that, like, you're present, that you're blessed to make those calls, that you're blessed to do these other things. There's so many things that we take for granted, and just having that gratitude has been something that's been really game changing for me in the last few years, for sure.
In terms of gratitude, is that a lot of the self-talk that you give yourself to say, you know what, I'm going to be grateful, I'm going to be in the present moment? Is that what keeps you kind of grounded?
Yeah, and I don't want to seem preachy in the fact that I'm not perfect. Like, there's a lot of days I should be practicing gratitude that I'm not. There's a lot of days, like, it is, some days I catch myself, I'm like, how did I say that? You know what I mean? Like, that sounds so spoiled, it's not even funny. But it is something that I'm daily adding into my practice of, yeah, you could tell yourself, but for me right now, it's usually a conversation with God or something like that. It's some sort of prayer in general right now. But before that, I was grateful. I literally wrote down every single day what I was grateful with, my goals for every single day. And I will become this, and this is happening. I am this. It's positive brainwashing in a roundabout way. But I think, and this is kind of what talks about, we chatted a bit about my kids and so on and so forth. This is one of the things that I've noticed with them as well, and it's really made me focus on being more grateful, is the lack of their gratefulness at certain points where I'm like, wait a second, I'm like, where did he learn that from? They only learn it from their parents, you know what I mean? So it's really brought into perspective that, I'm no matter, and I try to be the most grateful I possibly can when I'm in my worst situations. And it is absolutely, I tell everybody, it is one of the most powerful things. Like, I'm going through a divorce, certain things have happened in my life. And there's times where like, I can't believe this is happening and I want to strangle somebody. As soon as you start, becoming grateful, you just realize like, hey man, like, this is no big deal. I'm still alive. I'm breathing air. I'm still living a beautiful home. I still have food. I still have my kids. Most importantly, I still have all these other things. I think gratefulness is something that a lot of people talk about, but if you start practicing, it makes a huge difference.
That's beautiful. And gratitude is one of the most important things. And that's really great advice. And I always say it's quite lonely at the top. So people rely on you for support. Where do you get your support? You've mentioned mentors, you've mentioned books. Is that the majority? And knowledge as well. Like where you're headed and what you've done and have accomplished, you should be extremely grateful for, by the way. Where do you get that support from?
I'll phrase it this way. If you search, it will come, right? And I think that's the best way to talk about it, in the fact that a lot of people are like, well, how do you meet this person? And how do you meet this person to get mentored by? So these doors always open up when you move up. I hate to say this, but move up in life or business or whatever you want to call it, right? You're maturing in your business. Let's just put it that way. Once you get to a certain level, you have to understand other people at that level or higher are looking for people to work with and mentor with and be in that culture, right? Like it is, I put it this way, right? Like when somebody stops drinking, right? Let's say they were an alcoholic or whatever. When somebody stops drinking, they go to AA, they find another group, right? And a lot of times they get rid of the group that they were there before that were maybe holding them back. For myself, Grant Cardone actually mentioned this, or one of my friends, Corey from Grant Cardone mentioned this, is that I try to live my life as if I had an executive board in my life. So what I mean by that is when it comes to faith, I have a pastor that I follow, right? When it comes to training, I have a guy that I follow. When it comes to business, depending on what type of business, I have somebody that I'm following and mentoring directly from them. And sometimes, to be very honest, I have to pay to get in that room and build that relationship. But once I paid and got in that relationship, I've earned my way into that room, right? Now that's where friendship builds, and that's where people are like-minded and they realize that they can work together. That it's a similar type of person. And the thing is too, is like there's a lot of successful business people that I would never hang out with. They have nothing in common. We have completely different beliefs, etc. So for myself, I'm always, even like the Wild Sheep Society, for example, we're just at this gala. Well, for a perfect example, some of these guided hunts that these Americans are paying is like $100,000 to $1 million for one hunt, right? So these are obviously well-to-do individuals, right? Mm-hmm. That have very similar philosophies. And so we have so many connecting thoughts and beliefs, right? That it is very easy to befriend them and learn from them as well. So I think, to better ask your question, a lot of people are like, how do I get mentored by Ryan Serhant and you just started real estate? Well, the truth is you're not going to, because you don't add any value to that friendship yet, right? But there is somebody that you will add value to and you in turn will get value from. You know, if an agent's a rock star in their first 2 years and did 100 deals or whatever, 50 deals or whatever it is, right? It's very easy to become friends with that guy or gal and learn what you need to learn, right? And then you can bring yourself up. So there's ways to kind of, doors open once you hit certain levels. You just have to search for the next mentor. And it sounds bad like I'm getting rid of all the other ones. That's not the case, right? They're still friends. They're still whatever. But this is how you kind of grow in that that group of people you hang out with, the mentorship, etc.
And you seek it out. You always seek to be amongst people that are better than you, and the coaching, and you're seeking out where you can learn more and you can add value to your career and so forth. And you're also an avid reader, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
So reading,
Yeah.
educating yourself, being constantly on top of your game.
Yeah, so I've been coached by everybody from Patrick Bet-David, PBD, which is massively sold his company for like $400 million, has millions of viewers. He just had Trump on his podcast. Like he's a big dog. And that guy I learned a lot from. One of the things I actually learned from is he learned everything via books. The cool thing about where we are in this world right now, with ChatGPT and everything, you can learn anything from the people that have actually done it, and it costs you $17 for a paperback book. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. The reality is going to university, I'm not trying to talk anybody else from not going to that, but you can get way more value from $1,000 course with somebody that sold their business for $300 million than you can in 4 years in university, right? So seek that and you will find it. It is all out there. Yeah.
All right, let's shift gears. Can you recall the worst day of your life? What keeps you up at night? And some of the regrets you can share with us.
Yeah, so the worst day, I've had lots of worst days. Everything from like when I found my finger was broken, they said they couldn't do anything, to obviously going through a divorce. There's been a lot of really bad days. My kids' broken arms. Like there's been a lot throughout my life. I've had friends, like when I was a kid, in between there I was a bit of a gangster, so I've had friends that have passed away. There's been a lot of bad days in my life. That being said, I think what I try to do is take a lesson from everything that you've done. I try not to hone in on it too much and think about it too much. I'm just like everybody else, and I'll just be very candid with everybody, is that yes, my business's revenues are in the millions and there's thousands of transactions, but you know, one of my best friends, or really good friends, he said he sold a pretty major company, and he said it's funny. He's like, when I made $1,000 a month, the bank account always zeroed out, right? And he's like, when I made $1 million a month, it always zeroed out. It's like more money moving one way or another, right? So it's not like any of this money. It's not like there's $50 million in a bank account. We're like, woohoo, you know? So there's always stresses for money. That keeps me awake here and there. But I think what it is once you have confidence in yourself, and I think this is one of the things that we talked about before, is once you do a lot of challenging things and difficult things, both in life, business, you know, having kids, all these things are extremely challenging. The other challenges that you're up against, you know you can overcome because you've overcome others, right? So I think that's one of the important things to realize. When I look back at the things that I regret most is usually when I didn't do something I wanted to do, right? When I let myself procrastinate and I missed an opportunity because I didn't jump on it. Like these are usually, it's never usually an epic failure. Are there personal things that I regret I didn't do? 100%, because those are not my character. Those are not who I am or who I feel I am. But even those are learning lessons. Like they're done. So what is done? Will I do it again? No, I won't. I'm going to learn from that and move forward and be the better person that I can. You know, one phrase that always sticks to me, and this is something that I try to repeat, is your business grows to, especially in real estate and in any business really, your business grows to the development of you, right? So, and we develop by doing difficult things, by learning, by bettering ourselves, by disciplining ourselves. So the more we develop ourselves personally, this is why coaching and mentorship are so important. The more we develop us personally, the bigger our businesses will grow and everything else that comes along with it. So I look at those mistakes as something that is a growing aspect of my life, and just moving forward from there.
Do you feel you had to sacrifice anything to have the level of success that you do? And what was that?
Oh, 100%. And anything worth having is going to be some sort of sacrifice, right? So, and this is what I would say though is, and would be my regret, and I kind of mentioned it before, is you can choose certain sacrifices, and sometimes we feel like, I'll give you a perfect example, okay? So, when I went from fighting, I fought at 170, and I walked around at 185. and I was like, my six pack had a six pack, right? Then that was in, when I was 27. So when I started real estate for the first 2 years, I was working all day, every day. And instead of waking up early, going to the gym, doing the things that I need to do to better my health, and then all of a sudden I went into, I'm going to work, 12, 15 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week. I just want to make money, right? And instead of, and this is what I'm talking about when it comes to these regrets, and we can make these choices and we can sacrifice things we should sacrifice, and if we have a proper order, instead of waking up in the morning and training every day, or waking up in the after work going to have a workout or sauna or something, right? I chose, and once again, this is because a lot of the people I was hanging out with, this is what they did, so this is important to who you hang out with matters. But I chose to go drink, and I was never an alcoholic. I never drank till I was drunk. Not that I haven't got drunk, but that wasn't like a daily thing. I'd go out and only have like a couple beers. You know what I mean? But when you eat a couple beers, what happens? Or drink a couple beers, you start eating crappy food. Mm-hmm. And I went from this 180 pounds to like 248 pounds fat blob, right? Mm-hmm. And so, yes, I sacrificed my health. Did I have to? No, right? But these are the choices that you make along the way, right? So yes, 150% you have to sacrifice. You want to be an entrepreneur. The reality is you're not going to be able to spend as much time with your kids as you may want. You're not going to be able to party with your friends as much as you want. You're not going to be able to have the freedom and flexibility to take a day off whenever you want. Like, there are 100% sacrifices you have to make for everything, right? Like, you want to get a good body, guess what? You can't eat McDonald's every day. You're sacrificing eating something that you may think is delicious, right? The difference is that I think if you took out and sacrificed, watching TV, drinking, partying, social media all the time, like all of these other things, you'll be surprised how much time that you actually have for the things that are important. And some of the things that I noticed too is, for example, with my kids, is that my kids don't need 6 hours of my time. Right? They can't handle six, and I mean straight. They can't handle 6 hours of dad, And so I used to think it's like time meant like the quality, right? Mm-hmm. But that wasn't the case. Now what it is I have them for 2 or 3 hours before they go to bed every time, but I don't have my phone. Like, I'm playing with them. We're going for hikes. We're going to soccer. We're the entire time we're connecting. And that is 100 times more powerful than it was just me hanging out at home, watching TV with them, right? So it is not just the sacrifice of time, but then where our focus is in that time that we have and prioritizing that. I think that's something that is absolutely huge. But yes, to your question, 100% you have to sacrifice in anything worthwhile. It's just you choose what you're going to sacrifice. And if I could say anything, sacrifice the vices, because at the end of the day, and I'm not saying don't drink at all. I still have drinks. I still, enjoy my friends, but in moderation. You can choose how you do that. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's extremely valuable, and that's so important and such a good point. So, Sean, you have done amazing things in being as young as you are. What does the next 5 to 10 years look like for you? I'm sure you've already mapped those out as well. And what else are you doing? What's new for you? And let's talk about that.
So there's a lot of changes. Some I can't really talk about yet, but there's a lot of changes happening over the next few years, or maybe even a year here. My goal is to, and one of the reasons I want to create wealth is to make some change in the world, and give my opinion and have a voice in a bigger community type deal. But really, my key focuses are obviously brokerage building. My other key focus is my team, which has really transitioned a lot to now project marketing. So I'd really like to be able to sell high rises in Dubai, the States, and here, because once you kind of have that system, you can apply it anywhere in the world. So that's a big thing. And then I'm just about to launch. I've semi-launched. I've got clients already, but haven't really gone out a coaching program. That's been a big thing to me, is being able to help agents that aren't necessarily at my brokerage, because I can't have a brokerage everywhere at this point, go from making, $100,000 or $50,000 to that $1 million, if that's something that they're wanting to do. I get a lot of fulfillment out of that. So those are basically the three when it comes to business, my pillars and the things that I'm going to do. And then personally, I'm trying to finish my, next year, I'm going to finish my pilot's license. going to do a lot of hunting, spending a lot of time with the family. That's probably the most important thing, without a doubt.
That's beautiful. And Sean, I so appreciate we've taken so much of your time, and I so appreciate you being here. How can we support you? How can we reach out to you? I know you have a YouTube channel. How can we do that?
Yeah, so I just started the YouTube channel, and you're going to see starting the first week of April, about 9 videos a week. So a lot of it is going to be business built. I'm going to have a podcast on there as well with some really cool people. I'm going to have a day in a life type stuff, some more vlogs. So that's done well, hunting stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun. So that starts in April. And it's just my name, Sean Zubor, SeanZubor. And then you can follow me on Instagram as well and DM me or reach out to me if there's anything I can do. Obviously, we'd love to have you if you're local. I'd love to hear about our brokerage. If you're not, if you're interested in coaching, I'd love to be able to help you out. There's a lot of different ways that we can work together in the future.
I really appreciate your time. It means a lot to me. And the knowledge that you have been able to share is priceless.
I appreciate you having me on.
I hope this was as inspiring for you as it was for me. I love that Sean is so driven, and I can't wait to see what he does in 5 to 10 years. I think it's going to be incredible. I want to hear about your success stories. I want to hear about your goals and how you're reaching them. Remember, the sky is the limit. Anything is possible. Just have to go after it. Thank you so much for joining me on The Wealthy Acre. Till next time, I'm Deanna Kleine, your host.